Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. So this opening monologue, is that like basically the Pledge of Allegiance for Starfleet? You say it before every class and before every mission. Everyone just stands up and puts their hand over their heart and recites it. I've always wondered that. Star Trek Beyond, released in 2016, and is directed by Justin Lin, who we just recently spoke about with Fast 5, who also directed Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious 6, and F9, which someone commented on my review of Fast 5 saying that F9 being delayed to 2021 is the only good thing that has come out of this whole coronavirus thing. I won't fight you on it. And this film is starring Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, John Cho, Zoe Saldana, Anton Yelkin, and Idris Elba. It has been 3 years since we last saw this prequel Enterprise crew, and their mission to explore strange new worlds has been going pretty well. However, it's gotten very episodic. Zing. So the crew docks at the brand new and most advanced starbase in the galaxy, Yorktown. However, soon after docking, an escape pod also docks at the starbase and is requesting help for a starship to come out and save her crew. But things are not always as they seem, as the Starship Enterprise is warping into a trap. And that trap, of course, leads to the destruction of this version of the USS Enterprise. And that's not a spoiler, we all knew this was happening. When these trailers were coming out, all of us went, oh, so the ship is being destroyed. Didn't we see previews for that in the last one? However, the less I talk about Star Trek Into Darkness, the better. I'll save all my ranting for when I actually do review that movie, but maybe just a little preview of it here is John Harrison. And Magic Tribble Blood? Let's focus on this movie, because this movie is actually frickin' awesome. Now, I am a big Star Trek fan. I haven't watched every single episode of every single series that have been released. I've definitely watched the majority of the original series. Definitely the first 2 seasons. I think I kind of got out of it with that 3rd season just because it was a little ridiculous. I remember really liking Star Trek Voyager. I love Star Trek The Next Generation. Out of everyone, that's probably my favorite. I haven't watched every single episode. Back in the day, we used to get all these episodes on just one VHS. That's right, we would go to Suncoast, and my older brother Peter, who is the biggest Star Trek fan that I know, we would get VHS tapes of one individual episode. Not like today, where you can binge watch it on Netflix, or back 10 years ago, where you can get the entire series or an entire season on DVDs. This was back in the time when it was one VHS tape per episode. 45, 50-minute episode. I remember my brother just had a whole shelf of all the episodes that he had collected over the years, and it was... it's actually very sad when you think about it. So wasteful. A whole VHS tape for a 45-minute episode of Star Trek, whereas now it's... wow, we've come a long way technology-wise. I remember when these trailers were being released, and Star Trek Into Darkness, it did well at the box office, but people were not as happy with that movie as they were with the very first Star Trek that came out in 2009 that rebooted everything. Which, if you want to go back and watch my review of that movie, it is one of my favorite sci-fi films out there. I think it's wonderful. It is the definition of what a reboot should be. Thank God it happened, because Star Trek, of all series that need reboots, it's that one. So at the end of that movie, I was so excited. We have this similar crew, but it's a new crew. We have new actors here, and I want to see them interact with each other and see what mischief we can get into. And then Star Trek Into Darkness happens, and instead of going down a brand new route, they tried remaking Wrath of Khan, which you just can't do. So I was trepidatious when this film was coming out, especially when those trailers came out, and we see the destruction of the USS Enterprise, and I'm thinking, oh, great. They're kind of going to the Star Trek III Search for Spock route, where that USS Enterprise explodes at the end of that movie. Are we following the same trend? Why can't we do anything different? And I wasn't the only one that felt that way. But my God, was I so wrong. I remember going to the theater and watching this. I remember I was called for my district manager to go help out with another store back when I was in retail out in Burton, Michigan. If you've ever heard of that? I'm shocked if you have. I don't even think that city exists anymore, because it barely existed when I went there. But they had this movie theater at the mall that I was working at, and it was actually a pretty nice theater, even though I was the only one there that night, except for one older couple that came into the theater like right as the last preview got done. Oh, that just pisses me off. There's no better movie-going experience than going to the movie theater and you being the only one there. Is it good for the theater? No, not at all. But it's really good for me watching the movie. Just to have that couple stroll in right as the movie gets started. Oh, pissed me off. But I was so pleasantly surprised with this. This is one of my favorite Star Trek movies because it gave me what I wanted. I've been craving to see, okay, I want to see these similar characters, but yet new actors. I want to see them interact with each other. I want to see them get into situations with each other. I want to focus on the human aspect of the show Star Trek because that's when that show excelled for me. Not for the cool visual effects, not for cool space battles with the Klingons and the Borg. No, it was when we got these really humanistic moments. And that's all that we get here. I love this movie because once the Enterprise is destroyed, we have little bits and pieces of characters pairing off with each other in several different situations. You have Kirk and Chekhov going off on their own journey. We have Spock and McCoy. Of course, that's always the perfect pair. Uhura and Sulu have their own journey. And Scotty meets up with the natives on this planet. I just love the concept of this film. I also like that Chekhov had a bigger role to play in this movie than he has in the previous ones. It's kind of just a joke in the previous ones, but here, he's following our captain. He's following Chris Pine around. So yes, he's getting some great airtime on screen, and the reason why I'm happy about that is because a month before this movie was released, Anton Yelchin passed away in a car crash. A month before this film was released. Early 20s, I think? That's just terrible. That shouldn't happen to anyone. And this film was also plagued with the death of Leonard Nimoy during pre-production of this movie. So this film is just, there's an overcast of just dreariness and dread and death all around it. But I think they play tribute to Anton Yelchin and Leonard Nimoy beautifully here. They incorporate them into the story, especially Leonard Nimoy, and it turns out that the Zachary Quinto version of Spock finds out that the Leonard Nimoy Spock, who we saw in the very first Star Trek movie, he has actually passed away in this universe. I love that incorporation, and I like the paradoxical, metaphorical, philosophical questioning that could cause if you had an alternate version of yourself in your timeline, and they pass away. How does that make you feel about your own mortality? Ooh, my head is spinning. Now, on top of the really good story character moments that we actually get some pretty impressive and innovative, at least when it comes to the Star Trek universe, innovative visual effects when we get with the Starship Enterprise. One thing that always bothered me about the show Star Trek is that the Enterprise always seemed like it was driving along just one flat surface, one plane. When you're in space, you can be approaching other ships and planets from a multitude of different angles. But yet we always see the Enterprise just cruising along like they're on a highway, meeting up with other ships on highways like this. Here we see the Enterprise. It's almost like they have a GoPro attached to the back of the ship, but we're seeing it cruise along. We're seeing really cool warp speed visual effects, and we see it spinning in space. We see the planet spinning in space. It's a really, really nice design choice. And I love the basic core of this movie, which is finding that passion, or at least developing that passion in you to continue on, to continue Star Trekking beyond what you think you can Star Trek to. That's what Kirk is struggling with. This is 3 years into a 5-year journey, and he says it. It's a subtle little line, which I absolutely love, but in his log, he says that everything is feeling really episodic. It's a little nod to the TV show. I love that. But he's losing that passion. He's losing that drive to continue exploring, and he just wants now a simple desk job job at a space station somewhere. So it's nice to see him go through this movie, go through this journey, and develop that passion again. If there is anything that I'm gonna dock this movie on, I'm gonna say it's the villain. That's been the thing that's been lacking the most in this rebooted Calvin Star Trek timeline. It's villains, which I'm okay with because I really want to focus on the crew of the Enterprise, but we do need to have some stronger opposition to the Star Trek crew, so that's something that they definitely need to work on if they're going to make any more of these movies. But Idris Elba plays the villain Krull, who, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a little twist that goes along with him, and he has these powers of draining the life force out of anyone that he touches, kind of like a couple of weeks ago when I reviewed Warcraft, and the orc wizarding dude took all the life force from all the humans. Basically what's happening here. The characterization, the backstory behind it, it's a little thin, it's a little weak, but like I said, this film, the big thing about this movie is the relationship of all of these characters and seeing them develop over time and their interplay with each other, so I'm going to give it a pass for that. This is one of the best Star Trek movies that have ever been created, and it's a shame that it didn't do that well at the box office. Yes, on paper it looks like it made money, but with advertising, I think, doing research on it, it said it lost like $50 million, that's a shame. This movie should not have done that. It deserved to do so much better. I think they also released it, if I'm not mistaken, they released it the weekend of Comic-Con, which, if you're going to release a nerdy movie like this, why would you do that the week where all of the nerds in this country go to San Diego and not to the movies? Why would you do that? I don't know. It's an absolute shame. I know that there was talks of a Star Trek 4 coming out, and Chris Hemsworth supposedly was going to come back as Kirk's father, but I don't think that is going to happen. Quentin Tarantino said that he has a script for the next Star Trek movie, but I think he's also backed out of it too. So I don't think, if we're going to get a Star Trek movie, I don't think it's going to be in this new Calvin timeline at all. It might be its own thing, which is an absolute shame. I want to see this crew continue. I want 10 movies with this crew, which unfortunately we're not going to get, and it's absolutely sad. But in the meantime, if this is going to be the last Star Trek movie that is going to be produced, at least for the next decade or a couple of decades, then it's going out on a high note for me. I'm going to give Star Trek Beyond 4.5 out of 5 Blu-rays.
It's good. It's good.
Alright everyone, now comes my favorite part in my videos where I randomly select which movie I'm going to be watching next, so let's take a look. The Punisher! I believe that's the 2004 version with Thomas Jane. That's his name, right? The guy from Deep Blue Sea. He was the original Punisher that I knew, not the hardcore badass John Berthal version that we got a couple of years ago. From what I remember, this movie was strange because it came out during the time like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 and X-Men 2, really when the superhero craze started getting going. We have this comic book character, doesn't have any superpowers, and it's definitely not like your stereotypical Marvel movie that came out around that time. I haven't watched it in a while though, so again, I love this channel for that reason, so we'll check it out next time. If any of you have recommendations of films that you want me to review on this channel, leave your comment below this video, or go to my Facebook page, my Instagram, or my Twitter and leave your recommendation there. If I have access to it, I will watch, review it, and give you a shout out on the channel. So guys, have you seen Star Trek Beyond? What did you think about it? Where does it rank in your ranking of all the Star Trek movies that have been released? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know what you thought about it. And as always, if you like what you saw here, if you like my take on movies, then hit the subscribe button and hit that bell so you know the next time I release my next movie review. So guys, I will see you next time with my review of The Punisher. So in the meantime, be well, be good to each other, and go watch a movie. Take care, guys.